I don't know that you can do that if you don't know that you're loved,
Hmm.
which I'm going to touch on in the sermon.
Welcome back, everyone. Another week, another episode of The Word Made Fresh, the weekly show where we look at upcoming texts being preached at Riverside. And this week we have a guest preacher. Here she is, Dr. Paula Stone Williams, an internationally known speaker on gender equity, LGBTQ advocacy, and religious tolerance. Paula's book is As a Woman, What I Learned About Power, Sex, and the Patriarchy After I Transitioned. If you're at Riverside, we'll have copies available at the bookstore. And you've probably seen Paula's 2018 TED Talk because it has over 10 million views. I checked, Paula, between the version on TED and the version on YouTube. The combined number of that video alone is 10 million. I count for at least 3 of those views, by the way. So welcome. Glad to have you here with us. You're in Boulder, Colorado. How is life in Boulder today for you?
It's a beautiful day. Absolutely gorgeous. I ran early this morning and it felt wonderful. By the way, the 10 million views, I'm actually 9,900,000 of those. I do nothing but watch that. It takes all my time every day. But
That's
it
it.
does
We've
get the
all
count
learned the
up.
secret of how to
Yeah,
go viral on the internet. You just
yeah.
watch your own video
Just
9
over and
million
over and
times.
over. Just
Okay, you just said you went for a run today. That's a dangerous risk of derailing this whole conversation to just talk about running. I'm a runner. What did you run today? Do you train for things? Is this just a morning practice
no,
of
not
getting out and run a
anymore.
bit?
I I might possibly um, run 7 days a week. I will tell you it's 6, but it's probably not. It's yeah, and I've been running since 1979.
Oh,
Yeah.
uh, what have you run marathons, races? Was that part of your life
No,
still is? No.
I half marathon and then my body just kind of doesn't work anymore. So I ran a lot of 10Ks, 5Ks, half marathons when I was in New York. I was in New York
Okay.
until 2013. And out here, I don't think I've run a single race out here. I run mountain trails. I live in a town right outside of Boulder with great trails. I run dirt roads. I do run for speed a few days a week. This morning I did, yeah. And the older I get, the slower I get, which is quite frustrating.
Well, yeah, that's a good lesson for everyone, myself included, who often has training blocks with a certain race in mind of sometimes you just got to run to run, especially getting on trails and
Yeah,
off the pavement is really a way to just enjoy your body and moving and being in the world around us. I'm with you there.
yeah, it's true.
All right. Well, at the risk of this becoming a running podcast, because that's always what I want to talk about, we're going to the Bible because that's the other thing I could talk about. And this coming Sunday, you will be with us at Riverside. So leaving Boulder behind for the weekend, coming back to New York City. And you're bringing us into Matthew 14:22 to 33 with Jesus. He's not running here, he's walking, but he's walking on water. And this is the whole Peter coming out, sinking. We all know this story from the flannel graphs. Why this text as we're in Pride Month with how you think about this text and the world and everything happening? What's with this story and how are you kind of leaning into it?
It's not just this story. It actually started looking at Mark 4, where Jesus calms the storm. He's finished 8 many parables. He's in the back of the boat. The disciples are in the front of the boat. Terrible storm kicks up. They wake him up and he says, "Oh, you have little faith." And then he calms the storm. And, well, and I'll say there when I'm preaching, if at first they were terrified of this man who with 3 simple words could calm a raging storm, they're terrified of the storm. Now they're terrified of this man. Who
Yeah.
is this man who can calm a raging storm? Could he calm the storm raging in them? So I'm
Mm,
starting with that story and then going on to the 14th chapter
mm.
and just noting the similarities to it, only this time Jesus is not sound asleep in the back of the boat.
Yeah.
I thought about also doing Acts, I forget where it's Acts 26 or 27, Paul's shipwreck
Yep.
as another one in this, but they didn't have time to figure all of that out.
So
But
this
to
is
me,
definitely boat Sunday. You're putting us on a
it's
boat for all these
definitely,
things.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I'm not sure why it it came to me when it did, it was something that made reference actually to the Mark IV. And then you know how it is when you start studying a text. And they gave me the freedom of any text. And I looked at it and said, yeah, I actually think I want to go on to the 14th chapter and just, yeah, tie them together. And I mean, what I'm going to be talking about is finding the courage to get out of the boat and
Yeah.
answering the call onto the hero's journey.
Yeah, which is, I mean, we need that all the time, but there's a unique resonance of that in Pride Month, where,
Right.
so many people are forced to stay in certain spaces or to be trapped in certain spaces, and there can be fear involved in getting out of the boat. But what does it mean to give people that courage? I mean, this brings up in here, do not be afraid. The most issued command in the entire Bible. We find it again in this chapter here. And you see it in lots of contexts. Often it's when there's scary, weird-looking angels showing up, which would cause people to be afraid. But this is just, a weird instance of Jesus walking on water. Don't be afraid. You can do this too. Get out of the boat. Yeah, we need all of that encouragement, and we need that reminder. This might seem scary, but don't be afraid. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I always find that that's interesting in Scripture because fear is one of the 6 core emotions. And we have no control over when fear arrives, or happiness, or sadness, or anger, or surprise, or disgust. They come with their bags and knock on the door and say, I'm here, and you have to open the door. And you really have no choice. What you do have a choice in is how long they stay. And it's, I think, particularly with fear and anger, they never want to leave. They just want to permanently take over one of the bedrooms. And you have to finally say, enough. Enough. And it's very difficult, I think, to send fear packing and out the door if you don't have a solid sense of self. Most people work from the level of ego. And the level of ego is interested in just 2 things, power and safety. That's it. Most people don't work from that deeper level of what Jung called the self, or every religion calls the soul. To be able to do that, you have to have a solid sense of self. You have to be able to get past that desire for primarily safety and power. And I don't know that you can do that if you don't know that you're loved, which I'm going to touch on in the sermon, the 22nd chapter of Matthew. And Jesus answered the last public question he was ever asked.
Ooh. You're taking us all over. So we're going on a boat trip through the whole Bible.
And that's unusual for me. I'm usually just, I'll stick into one text and that's it, but I'm actually touching on 3. Yeah.
Oh, you're going to make us learn our Bible, which we're all about at Riverside. The fun trope that mainline liberals don't read their Bibles. We try to actually take the whole thing seriously at Riverside, and I know many others do as well, but we embrace all of that. How will this sermon come together? What is your process for crafting this thing called a sermon? I mean, you've done TED Talks, you coach TED speakers, you are well in the professional world of knowing how to put words together, but what's the process for getting ready to stand into a pulpit? No pressure. This is one that Martin Luther King Jr. may have stood into a half dozen times or so, just saying. But how do you kind of go about the sermon writing process itself?
For me, I'm looking at an idea. I'm waiting for an idea for something that might bring a bit of an aha to the audience. And it won't do it to the audience if it hasn't done it to me. And then I'll write the first draft. And I used to speak regularly at several mega churches in my previous life. And I remember the lead pastor of one of them saying, I really love the sermon you preach on the weekend when you come here, but someday I'd love to see Tuesday's sermon, which was the first draft, which generally does not look much at all like the final thing. So what I tend to do is the first draft, then I start memorizing. And I memorize it, here we go again, while I'm running. I find that moving peripatetically actually helps left brain, right brain. You're getting the entire brain to be speaking hemisphere to hemisphere. And the first day, usually like Wednesday, I will run, sometimes Tuesday, a circle in the neighborhood that brings you back to the house. So as new ideas come to me, or as I'm forgetting a section of it, I will come in and write them down. More often new ideas, and sometimes I'll take it in a whole different direction than what I was planning. And that will continue. That's the only day that I will do a run that is a circle. After that, I have enough of it in mind that I can go on my regular run, not for time. Those are the days I'm just running. And I forget stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you forget stuff. Once you've forgotten it 2 or 3 times in a row, I say this to TED speakers too, there's a reason. It's because it's extraneous to the main idea. To me, you've got to be able to pull a thread through the entire thing.
Yep.
And that's also true
Yep.
of a TED Talk. If you can't pull a thread through, you can't memorize it.
Yeah.
And so I am very comfortable memorizing. I've memorized every sermon and talk I've done for probably the better part of 50 years. And it's not nearly as hard as most people think. All TED speakers think they can't do it, and they all can do it. But for me, it's a process of going over and over and over. So this one's done. But when I was out running this morning, as I'm going over it, all of a sudden, I just had another sentence that really fits well with my closing illustration, and just a kind of a segue between those two. And so as soon as I got down, I put that in the text, and that will happen for me right up through the probably not Sunday morning. It'll happen right up through Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That I love that. Oh, I'm with you as a runner. It's also, I do the same. Running is where my
Yeah.
sermon writing happens. I just tend to have my phone with me, and I'll just make voice memos and have
Yeah.
an ongoing
If I
note and
was,
capture them there.
I would do that if I was younger, but I'm older than dirt. So things like that do not occur to me.
Oh, but even just that insight of if you find yourself forgetting something, there's a reason for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Just let it go. Don't try to
You know,
reclaim it. It's not needed.
and if it's, one of those things you just love, well, fine. Put it away for another message sometime later. But it don't fit this one, so it just, you got to let it go and let things flow as they do. So like
Yeah.
I said, I started with Mark 4 on this, and then I was going kind of deeper into Mark 4 and some literature pieces with that tied into the whole notion of calming storms. And then it just kept, Matthew 14 just kept coming to me, actually in the form of John 6, where it's a little bit different story.
Yep.
But it just kept coming to me. And it's like, okay, I think I'm supposed to add that too. And then once I was putting all that together, again, running, not on paper or even on screen, then it was like, oh, I need to go to Matthew 22.
Yeah.
And then the question was, well, do I do all 3 questions or do I just do the 1 question? And again, it's like, I want to just come with that final question: which of the laws is the greatest?
Yeah. Ooh. And finding that through line, so it's one thread the whole time, and anything that doesn't connect to that doesn't mean it's not a good thing to say, but it's not what needs to be said right now.
Right. And you probably will have a really hard time memorizing it if you cannot pull that thread all the way through, because I memorize sequentially. Each sentence depends on the previous sentence.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm always a fan of that. I'm always a fan of having to say no to a good idea, because it means I'm saying yes to the better idea.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to just do everything at the same time, which is a disservice to the person receiving it. It's like, no, I can't process anything now because you've just given me too much good stuff and it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, there are some comedians who I just love watching their process. Mike Birbiglia would probably be my favorite. And you see he's doing the same thing night to night to night.
Yep.
But you wouldn't know it. It feels like it's just all spontaneous, which of course is marvelous. And his process of putting it all together is not that dissimilar, I think, to what my process is. It's just, he's putting together one show a year, and I'm generally putting together one thing a week.
Seriously, he's got it easy.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Paula,
but like he says, we have it much easier in that it doesn't take nearly as much to get a laugh in a church, because people are so accustomed to being bored to tears that this message has got 2 really, really fun, illustrative, big laugh moments which I don't do all that often, but it just lends itself to it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to that part.
Oh, I love that you even know they're coming. You're like, yep, I can
Well,
plan for
yeah,
this.
these are, yeah, they're both just, yeah, really for sure. Yeah. There will be no doubt. A lot of it you don't know, and sometimes you have a better audience than other times.
Yep.
But yeah, these two will. I don't think there's much question about.
Yeah. Sometimes you can feel
Yeah,
this is going to be a thing. And then you got to be flexible of like in the moment, oh, I didn't see that one coming, but that also became a thing. Yeah. There's all
yeah,
the energy. It's always fun.
yeah. It is.
Oh,
It's yeah. I tend to do the one corporate talk a year basically, and it's also interesting as that thing unfolds. I'll find that something that I thought might be a good funny line just wasn't, and
mm,
it's like okay, and so that it gets dropped
yep.
as the year goes on, and by the time I
Yep.
get to the end of the year, I've got a pretty tight corporate talk.
See, you are a stand-up comedian. Same thing.
It's well, the corporate stuff, they're paying you really big bucks, so it
Yeah.
better be pretty
You
fantastic.
better have it
Yeah,
pretty tight.
yeah,
Yeah, they
yeah.
are yeah, that makes sense. Well, we are looking forward to what you're going to bring on Sunday. I mean, I think even after just hearing this conversation, we're all going to be looking for at least two moments when we're going to laugh, probably
See
more, just
now I've
because.
ruined that. Now I've ruined
Oh,
it. I should have just you're gonna be listening and listening, and then the first comes, and it'll be like, well, yeah, okay.
oh no, no, no! It's also a good deep cut. We're here at what minute 16 on this conversation, so someone's got to really be dedicated to listen
Well,
to
there you
this
go.
whole
See,
video.
yeah,
So, Lorraine, she's going to be one of them, and probably Bill. Those are two that always listen to the end. A few others as well. So we'll have
yeah.
a few people ready, but it'll be
Okay,
good for all of us.
okay.
This Sunday, it's all going to happen. So worship starts at 11 o'clock with special music preludes beginning at 10:30 on the Carolina organ. We'll have Bible study at 9:30 where we'll look at this Matthew text as well. And I think there's going to be a sermon talk back after worship. So we'll get to
There
talk
is.
more in the nave after worship, people in the room and online for that experience. Paula, I am so glad that we get to have you as one of the very few Sundays in June that exist. And one of them has you coming to Riverside. That is such a
Yeah,
gift. And it's going to be such a great time together. Thanks for this conversation, and thanks for joining us this Sunday at Riverside.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Jim.